Hi guys, video number 2. How about we take a look at Angular, a sexy little thing. It used to be like the black sheep of front-end web development for a while. It was considered very hard to use for beginners, the kind of difficult syntax, but lately the guys, of course, they did a great job in simplifying the whole thing. They call it Angular Renaissance. So I'm Italian. What's the Renaissance? This is the Renaissance. It's harmony, beauty, and also the term Renaissance. It means rebirth. You are They are trying to the guys in Italy back in those days. They were trying to make a difference from what was before, which was the Middle Age. Middle Age was something like this. Um, Painting was very different without that level of harmony and beauty that we see in the day. So there is a kind of people wanted to change, right? They wanted to change from something old to something new, something more beautiful. Um, so the Angular team are doing the same. They wanted to evolve and improve the whole thing to make it more usable, more attractive to um, the developers, of course. And I think they succeed, or they are on the right track. It's a long process. So what I wanted to show is how these new features of Angular they can be used in in an e-commerce front end, for example. What I did, it was building a front end of an e-commerce website. The e-commerce backend is a Magento, but it could be anything because front end uh, is agnostic about the backend. So we have this little toy that I will show you, and we will try to analyze and see the juicy new features, guys. I'm so excited. I love it. There will be server-side rendering. There will be the new way of deferring views, resources, signals. So hopefully it's useful for someone who wants to try Angular and kind of see these features in action. Um, this is the toy demo example that we will use. So list of products, and then there will be a cart with the list of the products, of course. And also I've added this little widget, this little input field where we can dynamically filter the products with signals, of course. So the reactivity is done with signals, and then there is the page of the product itself and add to cart. So this is kind of the app that we will use as an example, and these are the feature that I want you guys to see: the standalone components, the new syntax, and then new way of um, the new way of sending the parameters to the components, server-side rendering, boom, very nice, signals, state management, the famous state management problem, and then another super cool feature is the interoperability with signals and observable. We can jump from the old powerful but complicated way into the new signals API, resource, defer views, and then I show you also an example of event bus, how to use the architecture. So let's jump into it. Super duper excited. First thing, standalone components, right? Standalone components is a new way of creating, I would say, is a new way of wiring components in Angular. Back in the days, it was a big effort to even create a component and wire it with the rest of the application because there was a module. Today, the Angular architecture is very simplified so that these components they can be simply created and they are kind of way easier to embed into the application. Let's take for example um, the components of the home page. We have the header and then multiple components for the products. And so when we have the layout, for example, we have navigation, mini cart, content and footer, so they can be embedded. In this way, we don't need to create an additional module or something crazy like we had to back in the days. So for example, we have the header. Let's grab it. Components, header. So the header component is like this as the CSS, HTML, and then it can be imported here. Another thing is that the Angular team is working to simplify this even more, so they are trying to simplify this component. One of the key advantage of React back in the days, it was creating a component was as easy as creating a function, and boom, you could use it straight away instead of having to deal with all this old wiring process, which now is not there. So this is one feature. Second feature is the if for syntax, or rather say the new template syntax that they have inside the components themselves. Let's close everything. Let's see something like, for example, take the ratings here. Okay, so this is the rating stars component, which I wrote completely from scratch. It is a pretty good point. It's a pretty good example to look at. So we have the stars which are rendered in SVG, and then we can send the rating as parameters, so we get some of the star filled up. It also supports, the float. They don't have to be 3, it could be 3.5, 3.2 stars. And then there is a loop, like a for loop, which is printing the number of the stars. And so here we have an example of the for. It's pretty clean. The only part I don't like much is track, but I think they need it. So you can see that it's for index of print the stars. Good. Back in the day, it used to be the ng4, so it's quite horrible to watch. So the rating components. This let's take this example also to explain the other feature, the input, which I was talking about. The component input is how we are sending the parameters to the component itself. So for example, this rating stars, we want to send two parameters, the max numbers of stars and also the value. So let's try to see that in action by changing a little bit the code and see what happens. So for example, let's say that the default value here is 6. So what we get is we get 6 stars, and of course this is the default value of the component itself. Let's see how we are using that. So rating components, Let's search for it. Rating components. Say a rating. Here, for example, product card components, because this one is used in the product detail as well. Um, upper rating it's called, really? Okay, so here it is, the operating component, how we are using it. We are communicating the parameter via this syntax, rating value equals 3. So this is the way we are sending the rating value, which then will be sent here into this variable, and then we can use it. So I'm using this to recalculate the percentage and stuff like that. So this is how we are doing the input. Then the other feature I want to show is the server-side rendering. So essentially, out of the box, Angular provides a way to server-side render the pages. This is awesome because if you think about how the frameworks like React or Vue, um, what you have to do to achieve server-side rendering is basically to use a meta framework like Next.js or Next, right? And this is a really key that Angular provides it out of the box inside the framework itself. Um, this is, I think, a very unique feature. Not many frameworks have it. For example, Svelte has a Svelte kit, and probably Quick has this feature embedded into the framework itself. But the fact that it's embedded inside, it's out of the box, butter included, is a great feature. Obviously, server-side rendering is useful for things where you need a very high performance. You want the HTML rendered from the server, and then the client will just display it, so performance will be very good. And this will be useful for things like websites, of course, where we want to get a good score in Google Page Insight. So what happens is that Angular server is rendering um, on the server side all this HTML for us. So um, when we go to see the source, we don't have just an empty JavaScript placeholder. We truly have the render. You can see this render HTML. It means that um, the client doesn't have to render all these bits and pieces, and so good browser will be happy, and Google will rank our page higher as well. And this was very easy to do. We don't have to do much. We just need to tell Angular um, to render pages as server-side render by default, and then just recently they added a feature where we can control which pages are rendered with which strategy. We have this file, the server app routes server.ts. You can see, guys, we can target specific part of the website or the web apps, and we can say we can set a specific render mode. For this one, everything is .server, but we have client, pre-render, and server. We also have another application where I was using the pre-render, like the static generated content. This would be useful for things like a blog or a portfolio. In fact, I use that in a portfolio. But if we have dynamic content like an e-commerce, we know that those pages will change often, so we want to be in server mode so that potentially those can be the content could be fetched fresh from whatever source it is. But this is really cool. So the fact that we can add a sub path and say that the product I want it to be server and the rest could be whatever we want. So um, we can with very great level of detail specify what we want and where. So awesome. Other features are signals. Signals are a way of simplifying the existing strategy for reactivity, which was Observable and RxJS for Angular, which was powerful but complicated. So I used it in the past. It's quite a very hard to implement simple features like react to a button click and then download something from a server. With Observable, we need to use a complicated syntax to doing that, but the Angular team realized that probably for the majority of simple cases, it's not worth it to over-engineering the solution, even though I have to say that RxJS give you an insanely high level of flexibility. I think that RxJS is the final solution to reactivity in general. So those guys who created the paradigm of reactive programming are totally genius, and they try to solve the problem of um, the big problem of how all the interactions and stream of events can be managed in a web application, and they are doing that with RxJS, which is the foundation of it. It used to be the foundation of Angular. So what we're going to see is signals. Let's say that signal is the simplified version of RxJS or an alternative way. Um, Having said that, the team of Angular realized that most of the web applications nowadays are created with RxJS, so they are kind of transitioning into the new way of doing things. So let's see an example. Example we provide is the signals to manage an input web form. So the classic, we have a number here, say 5, and then this one is changing here, and then something happened here. So it's the number of products that I'm loading. Let's say 2. We see, and now we have 2 here. So what does this code look like? Let's go and take a look. So we have the home page, right? The home page, we have an input, and then the status, and then this one I will show later, the defer, but the important part is what happens behind the scene, which is, for example, here we can see loading is a signal and page size is a signal as well. This is the corresponding in React. It would be useState probably, or what is people is used to in the React world. So we have an atomic element, which is more powerful than the normal variable, because we can do a little bit more than just, or we can do a lot more with these signals, use it in a specific way and convert it, for example, to something like observable, which is insanely good. But the basic is that, for example, we have just a flag here, signature is loading or not loading. And then, similar to all the JavaScript framework, of course, we can use the signals and print them, for example. So, for example, here we are printing the page size, which is defined in the components.ts. So all this is pretty nice. It used to be very complicated with very complicated with the old pattern, because the RxJS word and observable, we need to subscribe to observe things and then unsubscribes to avoid memory leak. So powerful, but with great power comes great responsibility. Here, basically they created a level of abstraction over that, I would say, which covers the majority of the cases. So what do I mean when with RxJS is more powerful? I want to take a look at the operators. So RxJS operators, they have the marble operator where we can pipe, map, subscribe, but we have an insanity amount of operators which covers basically every possible interactions that the user can have. The downside is that they can be complicated. Also, the syntax to obtain something simple is a little bit of a pain. So what I think is that having both options on the table is very good, and converting one to the other also is a great thing. For example, here I'm using a signal in conjunction with the possibility of converting it to observable to obtain the debounce. This is the classic requirement that we would have in something like an input. So what's the story? If I type very quickly, like that, we don't want to fire 1 million of requests to the database, to the backend, and then to the database, so that we don't overload the system. We don't stress it too much. We want to add a little bit of a pause in between the keystrokes. So it's called debounced. For example, here, let's have a look at the API calls. Let's have a look. Where did my window go? Let's have a look at the... It's not there. There we go. Okay. Let's have a look at network tab. So what's going on is that here I'm looking at the fetch HR. If we say 5, boom, we get a request to the backend. But you see, if I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 until I'm done, now 5 was the set 1, 2, 3, let's say, boom, it's just fetching the one with number 3, even if I change it a lot of time. So it's kind of using the debounce. And this one, this specific feature, which is powerful, is using RxJS. So it's so cool. We can use the old way of doing things, like using these powerful operators, but still we can go back and reconvert to a signal and be back in the simple world. So we're going to do observable, then using pipe, and then the debounce, which is one of the operator, magic powerful operator of the RxJS world. So very nice, super cool. Other things I want to show is the state management, the problem of the problems in the front-end world, um, which has been implemented in a billions of ways and libraries and stuff. My suggestion is to go with what the framework offers out of the box, unless the application gets very complicated. So you need to scale and use maybe something like the Redux pattern. So if you're using React, we have Redux, but also, of course, Angular has its own way of, I think it's called NGRX, uh, um, the state management library. But here we show how simple it is to manage the state, the global state, shared across all the components. For example, for something like a cart, where you have the number of products and the product inserted in a cart, and then you want to use that in another, for example, page, and you have an add to cart, and still all these components are kind of, they use actually the same global cart. So let's see how this is implemented. And I've implemented these features with the signals, of course. So we have a service which contains the cart quantity and the cart data, um, and then other booleans. But the point is that we can use the cart service wherever we like. Let's see it in action. So cart service. For example, we have something like a mini cart here, right? The mini cart is um, this component in the UI where we can kind of see quickly what has been added in there. And the mini cart is using cart service, and then we have the for, and you see we are fetching the data that was here, stored inside the global cart. And the interesting thing is that we get all the auto-completion stuff. So for example, we have dot, and with the power of dependency injection, it's amazing. We get auto-completion, and it shows already what we can do on the cart service that has been injected in here. So this is pretty awesome because the signals here can be used in multiple places, and it greatly simplify how we could structure the global state. And in most cases, this pattern is enough for for building even medium-sized application or even big application. So this is the state management. Let's see maybe another places where the cart service has been used. Maybe the add to cart button. So we have a function called add an item to the cart, and this one it will be cart service again, this time in the button component. So the service now is being used here or somewhere like here. We are still using the global service, which will then interact with the, you know, with the data inside the class. Good old nice object-oriented programming where we have the properties, the method, and we can expose these methods all across the web application. Nice. So this is very slick, very clean way of structuring a web application and have everything type safe. With type safe, we can guarantee that these are the methods that we want to expose. So we are using the power of Angular and object-oriented programming with the new syntax. I guess my idea here, my opinion is that we are using the both of the two words. So Angular 19, Angular from 17 on, they are trying to mix the best of the two worlds. The other thing I want to show is the defer view. This was recently introduced, and it's exciting, especially for performance, of course. So let's say that we have a page, and we are very interested in optimizing the performances, right? How about this? We have this part of the page, the upper part, which is loading something like a banner and other bits and pieces. But then when we scroll down, we have this part of the web page, which is it contains a lot of HTML and CSS. And for web application where we have millions of users, this sort of optimization that we are trying to do, like we can say, don't load this part, the CSS and bits and pieces until we need it. So it's kind of lazy loading, right? We don't want to load unnecessary resources, unnecessary parts of the web page that the user doesn't even he's not looking at it yet, so it's not in his viewport. So we would get a faster load page, and we spare some bandwidth, of course, because we're not sending additional pieces of data until it's requested. I think Quick was trying to, or the Quick framework was the first one trying to introduce this idea, and now Angular is doing that. So cool, everyone is trying to kind of copy from each other, but that's art. That's the essence of the art. I say try to steal. I say that an artist is a thief. Let's try to steal the best of the ideas. Um, but that's also what Vue did to Angular with the template. So it's kind of nice that these frameworks, they influence each other. So back to the problem. What did they do? They introduced this syntax called deferred view. It's the last point that I want to show you. Deferred view. How does that work? Let's have a look. So on the page, home page. All right, we have. Let's make it a little bit bigger. we have defer and then hydrate on viewport. So this means that this part is lazy loaded basically, that bits and pieces of what's inside this grid, it will just be kind of activated, initialized when the page it will be in the viewport when we scroll to that point. So let's see if it's true. So you see I'm loading the page, I am here, I still didn't go in the lower part of the page, and let's see what happens when I scroll down. Boom, something else has been loaded. So actually we can take a look also at the source, and we can see that it should be part of the pages will be downloaded when we scroll down. Boom, like a chunk of this part will be downloaded just when we scroll down. This is super good for optimization purposes. They also have other policies. It's not just on viewport, they also have on click and other ones that you can have a look, but this is the concept that they introduced, which I find super interesting, and probably it's ahead of other frameworks as well. So we have lazy loading in other um, frameworks like React, but this one is embedded inside the Angular itself. So amazing and exciting. Okay, these are was the last feature I wanted to show you. Now let's see it's something like event bus. This is not specific to Angular. It's something that I built, but here what I wanted to show you is how we can get creative with the framework itself. How about we can how about we build an event bus to detect something like add to cart, like events, and then reuse those, detect, consume those events, and use it for something like adding a notification. So I prepared a little bit of something here. We have the layout, and we have a notification container. So it's ugly, I already tell you. I like to build pixel perfect solution, but this one just a little bit improvised. We don't care much about the design. So we have here a notification center which will consume the notification events, and we show them here. Um, let's see the code. The notification component is basically observing the latest event, which is in an array of events, and then we have something like current event, which then we can use it for doing whatever we like to do. So for example here I'm console logging it, but it will be also used in the HTML or in the view. So we want to grab the event and print it, and print it straight away here. So let's see it in action. Look at this sexy thing. It's fixed, stay there. Let's add something. I clicked it and boom, we have add to cart has been detected. Um, how does it work internally? Because I'm not simply sending the data there. Um, the the solution is a little bit of engineering where the notification, um, we have a notification event bus. I wanted to say um, service, which is the heart of this mechanism. So we have an event bus service with a private queue of events where we can push events, we can get the events, clear, or adding a hook on event, or get the last one, get the last events from there. So again, we are using the power of object-oriented programming and dependency injection, because this will be an injectable service, so it will be instantiated by the Angular by default. And then we can use it. We can use it to store the events from other services. For example, the add to cart here. I'll show you the whole flow. The add to cart service, at a certain point, it's basically pushing the event here. So we have this dot event pass, which is passed by the constructor here. So again, dependency in the injection power all the way. We have the event pass from here. We can use it, do our own thing of the logic, and then push the events, which we go here in the event bus, and then it this event can be propagated to whoever is listening to. So for example, the notification container. So this will be added here. What happens if I click another one? Yeah, of course. The last event is Whirlpool, whatever has been added. Now I click this. Mitsubishi Electric has been added. So fantastic. This strategy is useful when we want to kind of create a level of abstractions. And for example, we want to use in a multiple way these events. So not just for displaying a notification. For example, we might have a use case where we want to send something to, let's say, Google Analytics event, or we want to send an email, for example. So whoever wants to listen to the events can then do its own thing. But the event pass strategy with Signal, so again we are using Signal, of course. I think it's a smart way of showing how to use signals and a little bit of object-oriented power in a real-world example. So I had an insanely amount of fun building this, and I can't wait until next releases of Angular, because um, the team is doing great thing in simplifying and improving the framework. So take it easy. I will I will build more things and show you more code. Happy coding.